No.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Democratic View. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and I am the hostess. Today I have a young woman with me who is very active in a community-based organization that lends help to those who need a specific kind of help. But I always believe that first things first, we want to know a little bit about who you are, Anita Halasz. I got it right?
Halasz.
Halasz. Halasz. It's a Hungarian name, very difficult to say. Halasz.
Yes.
So, Anita, tell us about where you were born and where you come from.
So I was born in Romania, all the way
Really?
in Eastern Europe. Yes, I was actually born in Transylvania. I am not a vampire. I was born in Transylvania.
Well, watch your teeth.
I know. I have horrible teeth.
You get that all the time, huh?
I do. Yep. Yeah.
And came here as?
I came here when I was 4 years old. I immigrated with my mother and my sister, and we joined our father in New York City, who'd come a few years before.
Aha.
Yep.
So you really were an immigrant.
Yes, I still am.
Aha. But you are a citizen.
I am, yes.
You are a citizen.
Yes.
Was it easy to get that citizenship for you?
Well, so I don't particularly remember the process because I was very young, but I got citizenship through my mother. So she took the citizenship test, and through that, both my sister and I gained citizenship. So I was about 8 or 9 years old.
So you were raised in New York?
Yes, Manhattan.
In Manhattan?
Yep.
Aha. And what school did you go to in Manhattan?
Which grade level?
What high school?
My high school, it's not many people have heard about it, but it was Baruch College Campus High School.
I know it.
You do?
Well, I'm an educator, so I know.
Yeah.
I know that high school.
Yeah. It was brand spanking new when I went there.
Aha.
Yeah.
What was the focus of that high school? Wasn't it about something about social issues as well?
No, it was a pretty
Regular?
general, standard. Yeah, I mean, so many of the educators there were young, so they were pretty progressive. So we got a very well-rounded progressive education.
But it's named for Bernard Baruch, right?
Yes.
Who was a very great man.
Yes.
Okay, so what happened after that? You went to college?
I went to college. I spent my first year in Binghamton because I felt that going away from home would teach me a few things. Did that for a year, and I came back home after that.
Well, Binghamton must have been freezing cold.
It was very cold. When winter starts in September. But then I transferred to Stony Brook University.
That's interesting. I love Stony Brook.
Yeah,
I think
it's a great place.
Yes, it's a great place and has a wonderful reputation.
Yes, absolutely.
And what was your major?
I was a women's and gender studies major.
Aha.
Yep.
Interesting working.
Oh, that was not the end of school.
No.
I actually, after that, I did a graduate certificate in women's and gender studies, and then I went on to get my master's in disability studies, which I just recently finished this past June.
In disability?
Yes.
What does that mean? What does that entail?
Disability studies? It was an interdisciplinary program, so it wasn't the strict medical focus on disabilities. We were looking at the history of the disability rights movement, narratives on disability, politics of disability. Very well-rounded and kind of interdisciplinary.
And where did
program.
you get that?
CUNY in New York City.
Oh, a fine school also,
Yes.
by the way.
Yep.
Some wonderful graduates come out of that place.
Yeah.
And how did you get involved in what you are doing?
So it's funny because I was thinking about that today. Every single time someone asks me that question, it never gets easier to answer. In fact, it gets harder to answer. But I think that, there's a very specific process to movements and doing the work that I do now. And a lot of it came from my upbringing. being a child of immigrants and seeing what it was like for my parents to relocate. And then also a few years later, seeing the interactions with doctors and the complications she had with that, I started to realize what it actually meant to be in a position that isn't part of the status quo. And having a women's and gender studies degree and learning all about gender and things like that, I kind of just started piecing all of it together and realizing that a lot of hard work needed to be done in order to better the lives of many people in the world.
Speaking of gender, it is 50 years ago that Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique.
Yeah.
She happened to have written it in a house up the street from me on Far Island,
Oh,
where
wow.
I went.
Very
Yeah, that
cool.
my friends then took over. No, I never really met her,
Mm-hmm.
but that was an earth-shattering book. Unfortunately, I hate to see that slipping back a little bit from where we were in those days when we were fighting to, I like to tell the story about when I was in college in the late 50s. I wanted to go to law school. I couldn't get into a law school. Women were not allowed in law school. That didn't happen for many, many years. I mean, you could if, there was one woman in the high school that my boyfriend went to that, but her father was a judge. My father wasn't a judge. I didn't get into law school. So I decided to save the world through teaching and became a teacher. So, and tell us about your organization exactly.
Community organizer in at the organization Long Island Jobs with Justice. So we're a national organization, but Long Island Jobs with Justice is just one of the coalitions nationally, and we bring together labor groups, so unions. We bring together communities of faith. We bring together community organizations as well as students and youth, and we work for and with working people on Long Island around issues of social and economic justice. Sounds very dense.
Well, it sounds very general and not specific enough. Tell us exactly what it means in real terms.
Yes.
I mean, what exactly are you doing when you walk in your office at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock, whenever it is?
Well, first thing I do is make myself a cup of coffee and get ready for the long day. But I'm a community organizer. I work with the community. I specifically work with undocumented students, and I work with immigrant communities, immigrant organizations. And we work in a very grassroots way. So we start from within and we work our way out. So we talk to people and find out what is important to them, what are they struggling with, what needs restructuring in their communities, what kind of political initiatives would help them and make their lives better. And we create very specific campaigns on how to make that happen for people.
Okay, so first of all, I want to go back to the word community. When you say community, what does that mean? How is that a geographical?
It can be geographical, so it can be very specific towns or districts on Long Island, but it could also be very identity-based or social group-based. We kind of leave it up to however folks choose to identify their communities, but it's generally spaces where people come together.
It's interesting. We have a group of Democrats who are working on some of those kinds of issues right now, and one of the things that we have identified is the need for a GED program for, adults, not for kids in high school who have dropped a passage into a college eventually, so that they can, better their skills, to get better jobs. I'm particularly talking about my own woman who has cleaned my house ever since I bought my house in 2002. Lovely, lovely woman. And she doesn't want to be a house cleaner all her life. And she wants to be able to do other things. So that's how I got involved in this area, because I want to see what I can do to help her. And so what did work?
So because I work with undocumented students, we really look at what are the needs of undocumented students, what are the needs of undocumented youth, and we work very intentionally and specifically to find things that would change their lives. So one of the things that we work on is access to education and access to resources in order to get an education. Because undocumented students right now cannot legally access any form of financial aid when they're trying to go to college. So things like FAFSA, federal aid, state aid, none of that is available to them the way that they were for me when I went to college. And our organization, Jobs with Justice, we developed a fellowship scholarship program where we are able to give out scholarships to undocumented youth who are trying to go to college. So we develop very specific things like that will bring real change in people's lives. But we also do a lot of political advocacy on big issues that will bring change to many people, not just small. One of those initiatives is the DREAM Act.
The DREAM Act, yes, I know. Well, it has the New York State DREAM Act, which is the one, and I must backtrack a minute and tell people how I met you. I met you at a little gathering that they were having at Holy Trinity Church in East Hampton, and I think that's its name. Oh dear, and you were with a larger group called WINS, which is Welcome Immigrants in Nassau and Suffolk County, and you presented the whole thing about the New York State DREAM Act, which really floored me because I didn't realize that there was one here in this state, and as a matter of fact, I believe it's passed the Assembly.
Yes.
Right now.
One committee in the Assembly of 3. It's moving along.
It's moving along at a snail's pace, I suspect. Yes. Okay, well, tell us about this DREAM Act, because it's very important.
Yes, so it's often difficult to talk about the New York State DREAM Act without saying a little bit about the Federal DREAM Act.
Of course.
And the Federal DREAM Act is a bit more, it's well known because it's been a topic of conversation for well over a decade. The National Federal DREAM Act is a bill that is still making its way to getting passed. People have been working tirelessly for over a decade on this, but it would provide a path to citizenship for undocumented youth living in the United States through education or service in the military. That's an immigration bill. It strictly addresses the citizenship status of undocumented youth. The New York State DREAM Act was a direct response to the inaction of our Congress, their inability to pass the Federal DREAM Act. And because states cannot pass immigration bills, they worked to do something a little bit different, something that would impact the lives of undocumented youth, and that's the New York State DREAM Act, which is an education bill. It would provide access to undocumented youth struggling to go to college in New York State. It would provide them with access to our state-funded tuition assistance program, TAP. It would also...
I know it well.
Yes.
Used it for my children.
I used it as well. It's great help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I know one of the things that you did mention that day was that it is limited as far as you can't be 35 years old and tap into this.
Yes. There are very strict requirements for qualifying.
What are some of the strict requirements?
Well, actually, the New York State DREAM Act has been through many different revisions and introductions. There are many different forms out there. And the most recent bill has very intentionally not placed an age limit on it just yet, because we know that it's going to be a point of contention.
Great.
So there is no age limit on it right now. However, the previous bill, there was an age limit of between the ages of 18 and 35. So we may see that again with this new one, but we're not entirely certain just yet.
Uh-huh. And how is it faring among the people of our own Long Island? Are they for it or again it?
Well, I can tell you right now that Senate-wise, the New York State DREAM Act has 20 co-sponsors. None of those co-sponsors are Long Island senators. So we haven't had...
None of those Republican senators?
No, none of them
my.
have stood behind it, unfortunately. And, you know, depending on who we're talking about, there are some senators that are a bit more critical and resistant to it than others, but overall, none of them have shown their support for passing the DREAM Act.
But the assemblymen are, I know that Fred Thiel, our
Yes.
assemblyman, is
Yes.
very interested in it and
There are-
has been a
yes.
proponent of it.
Yes, there are a handful of Long Island Assembly persons who have co-sponsored the New York State DREAM Act.
What is their objection to it? Would it cost the state a great deal of undocumented students, would you say there are in Long Island?
That number is very hard to pinpoint because of the fact that in order to get an estimate on that, people would have to fear behind that. So the numbers aren't particularly accurate. However, I can tell you right now that the New York State DREAM Act would impact anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 students in New York, living in New York State. So that's the entire state itself, but there aren't any hard figures for exactly how many.
Of course, you
individuals
know,
there are.
in order, and I don't know if people out here may not know because they may have a little bit more money than I did when I was a single parent raising 4 children. But in order
Yes.
give restrictions on the parents of the person applying.
Yes.
So it's not like you're, making $200,000 and applying for TAP.
No.
You know, these are people. These are through college,
Yeah.
and we all know how expensive college has become, even since the days when my children went to school. It's really is an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
And undocumented student population. What are their other?
Well, talking about Long Island, public transit here is just atrocious. It's very difficult to navigate Long
it's
Island.
non-existent.
Yes. It's very difficult. Undocumented immigrants are not allowed to get a driver's license. So that is one other huge issue for undocumented
That
youth.
is so shocking.
Yes.
How can you expect them to have jobs if they can't drive?
Yes.
There should be some kind of special driver's license for, allows them to drive. I don't understand why not. What does a driver's license mean, except that you have?
Identification and the ability to get around. Yeah.
I mean, I bet you, gun ownership is much more liberal than car ownership is.
Yeah. But the good news is that the most recent program that President Obama has introduced, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, that does give undocumented youth who qualify for the program the ability to get a driver's license. So that's a step in the right direction, but there are still thousands upon thousands of undocumented youth who aren't able to access that program. So.
And of this population that you're dealing with, of the immigrant students, are most of them Latinos?
No, I mean, I can, there's
That's why I'm asking.
yeah,
'cause I know
there's,
they aren't.
no, just like anyone, whether you're documented or not, there are many different kinds of immigrants out there. I was an immigrant. I'm not Latino. I'm white. I'm Eastern European. There are many Southeast Asian undocumented immigrants, African undocumented immigrants, Russian undocumented immigrants. It's not just Latino.
Yeah, even Irish, as a matter
Irish,
of fact.
yep. Yeah.
And Asians. And of course, they contribute a great deal
Yeah.
when they become the kinds of citizens that are educated and then are going to be part of the workforce and then contribute in the way of taxes. But it seems as though people in charge can't see around the corner. That's what I always say. It's my phrase. They can't get past the immediate cost of something and see that they will reap such benefits in the long run when they allow these people to become educated.
Absolutely. Well, I can even say, there's a huge deal that they're contributing now as well. It's not, obviously with citizenship, there's an even greater opportunity to contribute more, but there is this idea that undocumented immigrants don't contribute to our society, that they just, suck up our resources. But in fact, undocumented immigrants do pay taxes. They do pay taxes in the form of sales tax, property tax,
Payroll tax.
payroll tax.
Yes.
There are undocumented immigrants who pay taxes. They do have the ability to get individual tax identification numbers. So it's a myth that circulates in order to prevent opportunities.
And getting back to the federal government Immigration Act, if it ever gets passed, there will be stipulations on the path to citizenship.
Yes.
And isn't that something else that people, I know that they were talking about in the group that I was at, they were talking about preparing for that, preparing for how to take the test for citizenship so that they can, when it becomes, the availability of the Congress to shine upon immigrants. And that, is that something that also that these kids are concerned with?
Well, the federal, if we're talking about the Federal DREAM Act,
Yes.
right now that bill is actually being lumped into the broader immigration bill that's being drafted by the Senate as well as by President Obama. He has his own version of it. That's being lumped in there, but you must learn to speak English before you get your green card, which is a requirement that's not quite the same as what my parents had to go through. They had to learn English before their citizenship test. So now I think that it's very easy to say you have to learn English, but what many of our political representatives are not thinking about is, do folks have access to learn English? Do we have a significant amount of learn English? Do we have finances and support for these programs? How are we paying for these programs? I know that out east there are very few ESL programs that many people can tap into.
Only a short time. We have them at the library. As a matter of fact, I have spoken to the guy who started the program at the library in East Hampton, and he began the class. There were like maybe 4 people, and now we have. So there are at other schools. The GED program that they have available is in Hampton Bays. Now, if you live in East Hampton and you've worked all day, and most of these people, we all know they're working.
Yes.
We all know that they're working all the time. I mean, there are the layoffs in the wintertime for those people who are in the landscaping, but the GED program is in Hampton Bays. Now, from East Hampton to Hampton Bays is 45 minutes, and at least, and it starts at, they start early. So it's very hard for these people to get into these classes and then be successful at them. So there are a lot of, we need to do more of that kind of stuff. And when you say get a green card, the green card gives you the right to what? What is a green card? So
the green card it's the first step. It's not the first step, but it's the closest step once to legal permanent resident. And with that, you have the ability to do what citizens can do with the exception of voting. So you're able to get a driver's license. Students are able to access financial aid, can apply and take your citizenship test.
Oh, but then if you get a green card, you can then, it's 5 years, you have to wait 5 years before you can get, well, that should immerse you in English in 5 years.
Well, you have to learn to speak English before school. I was a little taught when I came here, so I absorbed it quickly.
My best friend is from Colombia, and she came here in the 6th grade, did not speak a word of English, and had to go to school, and by 7th and 8th grade, she spoke English. She now has a PhD.
Look at that.
And has been a long-time educator. So the chance to climb the ladder. That's the give me your poor, your tired, huddled masses yearning to be free.
Yep. One of my favorite rally chants is, take advantage of their knowledge, let the students go to college. And that's what I like to chant when I'm at these rallies, because it's true, we have to tap into their potential. These are brilliant, successful, motivated students. I mean, I don't need to tell you that, I know.
You don't need to tell me that. I have had classrooms with kids from all kinds of countries, and I know, and I know how bright kids can be, and and they do need the opportunities to be able to to thrive and flourish in this country because we will benefit. In the long run, we benefit from that kind of stuff. The rest of us benefit.
We are the future.
That's right. Exactly, exactly. Well, continue on with your very good work.
I will.
I wish you lots of luck, and thank you very much for coming. And anybody who has not had a chance to visit our website is ehdems.org, and you will get a link to YouTube, and on YouTube you will see Anita Halasz, right?
Close.
I'm never going to get
I
it
take all
right.
versions.
That's all right. Look, Italiano wasn't easy. I spent my life saying Italian with an O at the end. I always say it's what made me a tough person, because when I was a kid, they'd say to me, I didn't ask for your ethnic background, I asked for your last name. And I'd say, that is my last name. So that's how, so I went through the same kind of thing. But thank you very much for coming.
It's a beautiful drive.
Yes, it is. Well, on a good day, not in the summer. Thank you.